This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence. I think I'm just sort of spilling out a whole lot of feelings. I really love that this challenge has forced me to make a little time capsule. On this day, 100 years ago, Virginia Woolf wrote, "I should be reading Ulysses." This is 102 written pages. Hello everyone and welcome to another video. You want to know something that I've always been very bad at? Keeping a journal. But I've always been incredibly intrigued by this process and practice that some people have of consistently committing their thoughts and feelings to paper. And for writers especially, this seems to be an incredibly useful practice. I was watching this Donna Tartt interview and she describes the writer's notebook as something similar to an artist's sketchbook.
I keep my notebooks very much in the sense of an artist's sketchbook. A hand, a face, a bottle, a glass, little things that don't fit together, a tree branch, just little bits and bobs.
When I think of writers and their journals, the very first person that comes to mind for me is Virginia Woolf. In addition to being one of my favorite writers and in my opinion one of the most talented writers who has ever lived, Virginia Woolf was also a prolific journal keeper. And in addition to keeping journals out of fun and self-reflection, she also kept journals for the purposes of bettering her writing. This particular excerpt is taken from her journal on the 20th of April 1919, but what is more to the point is my belief that the habit of writing, thus for my own eye only, is good practice. It loosens the ligaments, never mind the misses and stumbles. And given that I myself am an aspiring novelist, I thought it would be really fun and interesting to try out Virginia Woolf's journal writing routine to see what effect it would have on my writing. So who was Virginia Woolf? Virginia Woolf was an English writer. She was one of the High Modernist period's most prolific contributors, with a number of her most significant works coming out through the 1920s. Her contemporaries were T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound, James Joyce, Catherine Mansfield, just to name a few. She also notably pioneered the use of stream of consciousness as a narrative device in her prose. She was an early champion of the women's rights movement, and although we know now that her ideologies on gender massively lack intersectionality, at the time her thoughts and writings were revolutionary. Just look at her non-fiction work A Room of One's Own, which is about gender and writing and poverty and what a person needs in order to become a writer, or her amazing novel Orlando, which was supposedly a love letter to Vita Sackville West and is about a person named Orlando who lives for several hundred years and who changes gender. We have one surviving clip of Virginia Woolf's voice, which was recorded by the BBC in 1937.
It is words that are to blame. They are the wildest, freest, most irresponsible, most unteachable of all things.
Virginia Woolf's writing and journaling routine, according to this website, on the days that she was well, she would write either fiction or reviews every single morning from 9:30 to 12 p.m. After lunch, she would revise. In the afternoon, she would go for a walk. And then after tea time, she would journal or write letters. The last time I wrote a letter to someone... Have I ever written a letter to anyone? I don't need to fulfill this part of the routine / challenge. She would write in her journal after dinner. I'm gonna go out, I'm going to get a journal. I don't currently own a journal. Yes, I have a lot of notebooks, but I feel like this requires a journal of its own. This is an excuse for me to go and buy a nice journal, really. That's the whole reason I'm doing this video. Every single day for the next 30 days, I'm going to try out writing in it every single day and basically just trying out Virginia Woolf's writing and journaling routine. But before we do that, before we jump into this video and this challenge for the next month, I did very quickly want to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Squarespace. Squarespace is a website builder which allows people to create stunning, dynamic, and lovely websites with ease. I've been working with Squarespace for almost 2 years now. I still absolutely adore their platform. Setting up my website was the easiest process in the world. Maintaining it is super simple. Squarespace is the perfect platform for setting up a website and connecting with the people who are interested in the things that you make. In addition to being affordable and easy to use, Squarespace has loads of benefits, from fabulous e-commerce features to powerful analytics tools. If you're looking to make a website, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/ChristyAnnJones to save 10% off your purchase of a website or domain. I have been doing this challenge for a few days now, and what I'm finding is that I am not very eloquent at all. Comparing your raw thoughts and feelings to the writing of Virginia Woolf is pretty rough, but I think because it's been such a long time since I've written a journal, I think I'm just sort of spilling out a whole lot of feelings. Like in these early pages, there's nothing really I can share because it's all so personal. Like I'm literally just writing down all of my feelings verbatim as they're coming out. And so I feel like this has been startlingly therapeutic so far. We're 4 days into this challenge, and I am hoping at some point I start, writing imagery and maybe doing something a bit more, there's interesting bits in here. I filled out more of this journal than I thought I would have by this point. I'm scared of filling up the whole thing in a month. This journal is huge. It's very thick, so surely I'm not going to fill up the whole thing in a month. We are currently just over a week into this challenge. Today is August the 6th. I just also finished writing my entry for August 6th. It was a really, really big entry. I had a lot of feelings yesterday. 9 pages. I'm finding that at this early stage of this challenge, I'm still very introspective in my writing, and I was going over some of Virginia Woolf's journals, and I haven't read them all in totality, but I've read snippets here and there, and a lot of them are really quite eclectic. Like there's snippets of criticism of other novels, there's her describing personal stuff, and I think a lot of it is probably not reflected because the journals are edited, right? There's entries here and there like every few months because probably it was too much to include them all. I find it really interesting to look at what she wrote about and what she cared about and what she thought. I really love that this challenge has sort of forced me to make a little time capsule of this month of August 2022, because I'll have this journal and I'll be able to look back on it in such intricate detail. Again, I'm very bad at keeping journals. This isn't the type of thing I would usually do of my own volition, but I'm enjoying the process so far, really. I like that I feel motivated to journal, especially when I've had a bad day and I want to get all my feelings out. Today is the 16th of August 2022. It is a Tuesday. Today I tried out a new little exercise with journaling. Rather than just spilling forward my thoughts and anything that I wanted to whinge about during the day, I tried actually describing the imagery of my apartment, which interestingly is not something I've ever done before. I think that's a really interesting exercise to try and describe spaces that you're very familiar with. I don't want to get bored. For me, if I start to get bored with a challenge or a thing, really anything in general, I will just not do it anymore, and that's a really big problem for me. So doing little structured bits and pieces in here I think is very useful. So as I think I've mentioned, I've been going through Virginia Woolf's journals here and there, just sort of looking at snippets. I really need to sit down and properly read them because they're really beautifully written and very interesting. I have on my tablet the complete works of Virginia Woolf. I think I bought them for like $4 5 years ago. It was a very good deal. And I found a journal entry from August 16th, 1922. So that's 100 years ago today. So on this day, 100 years ago, Virginia Woolf wrote, "I should be reading Ulysses and fabricating my case for and against. I have read 200 pages so far, not a third, and have been amused, stimulated, charmed, interested by the first 2 or 3 chapters to the end of the cemetery scene, and then puzzled, bored, irritated, and disillusioned by a queasy undergraduate scratching his pimples, and Tom, great Tom, thinks this on par with War and Peace. An illiterate, underbred book, it seems to me, the book of a self-taught working man, and we all know how distressing they are, how egotistical, insistent, raw, striking, and ultimately nauseating. Oh my god, Virginia Woolf, she did not like Ulysses. For my own part, I am laboriously dredging my mind for Mrs. Dalloway and bringing up light buckets. I don't like the feeling, I'm writing too quickly, I must press it together. I wrote 4,000 words of reading in record time, and when Jacob is rejected in America and ignored in England, I shall be philosophically driving my plough fields away. But I need no excuses, since I'm not writing for the lit sup. Shall I ever write for them again? It's really interesting that she criticizes James Joyce for being a self-taught working man, because it's quite classist. But in addition to that, talking about Mrs. Dalloway and being rejected from literary spaces, and that is a really interesting little window into where she was 100 years ago today. I've been going back and forth between trying to write at nighttime and then trying to write first thing in the morning and trying to see what works for me, because one of the things I like with these challenges is that it gives me the opportunity to try out new things. Basically, because of the Haruki Murakami video, it essentially got me back into running, which is a really positive thing. I'm trying to do Virginia Woolf's writing routine, but I'm also trying to find ways to make it work for me. What I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to grab my journal, I'm going to sit down and do some dedicated writing sprints. Now, I've done these in vlogs a bit. It's kind of like a writing warm-up, basically, and it helps with your prose on a word-to-word basis. Essentially, when you're writing, it's very, very easy to slip into cliche and to repeating the same images that other people write, and if you say things like, the envelope was red like roses, right? Like, that's a cliche, that's really boring, that doesn't mean anything. So doing these kinds of exercises really help with trying to push yourself to think more creatively about things, basically. I'm gonna go to this website, which is a random word generator. Generate random words. We've got repeat, page, attachment. Those are kind of boring. Let's try one more time. So we have broken, young, and reluctance. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes for each word, and then stream of consciousness, like write whatever comes into my head. Done. Don't mind me covering up what I wrote yesterday, because I did actually have a few notes about my upcoming novel in there, which I don't actually want to share, so I'm gonna cover this left side of the page up. First word really is a jumping off point, or at least that's how I've always interpreted this exercise. So I've got number 1, broken, glass, shattered, eggs, birds, beaks, and spindly legs, and then I just sort of keep going with this. Every time I get stuck, I go back to this word and I just kind of keep writing. Here we've got young, youth, the thing lost, moment by moment, hourglass, rotting fruit, the fleeting difference between mayflies and those really old sharks. Greenland sharks are the ones I was thinking of. And then I just keep going, and then of course I went over the other page. I don't have the dexterity to write as quickly with a pen as I do with a keyboard. Maybe I'll try tomorrow doing sprints that are a little bit longer. Maybe I'll pick 2 words and I'll do 5 minutes for each one, and then I'll have a little bit more time so I don't feel so panicked to try and get down every image in my head. We are almost done with this challenge. We're currently on the final stretch. Today is August 25th, 4 p.m, just past 4, and I'm going to be doing my 5-minute sprints that I said I was going to do yesterday. I'm going to do them now. Where can I film in this room that isn't bright? I'm gonna choose the word myself. I'm gonna pick something from this room. Jumper, Pac-Man, lamp, teacup, moose. I'm gonna write about moose. This little enthusiastic guy here. I realized that I actually forgot to write the date on it. I keep doing this. I keep having to retroactively put the dates on things because I just forget to put them on. Today is the 25th. I don't think you can see it. You can just see yourself in the cloudy sky behind you. Trust me, this is going for 5 minutes. About a page roughly. So this side and this side was where I wrote about moose. I know this isn't what Virginia Woolf does, but I don't know why, but for some reason I've really latched onto this exercise as being really good for helping me change the way I think about certain things. How do I explain this? So basically, in terms of writing figurative language, so when we talk about figurative language, metaphor, simile, figurative language is when you take the literal thing that exists in the scene and you put a figurative spin on it to change the meaning, right? So if you have a bus, let's say you have a bus, you have a yellow bus, you describe the bus as daisy yellow, right? That tells you a lot about the narrator and how they perceive school buses. It probably implies that your narrator is optimistic. So when you describe something as like that's a simile. A bus is like a daisy, simile, or if you have the daisy bus, it's a metaphor. If you describe a bus as yellow like a corn cob, that's a lot more of a practical image. If you use that simile in your work, it's probably going to reveal about your narrator that they're practical, maybe they grew up in the country, they see things as more utilitarian. If you see the bus as being crime scene tape yellow, then that's a much more dark and violent image. Maybe your narrator, the character who's perceiving what's going on, has a sad past. Maybe there was a crime that happened. You still just have a yellow bus. It's the literal thing that's in the scene is the yellow bus, but the figurative language completely changes the perception of that thing, right? I sort of find that working on my figurative language, because I love figurative language, I love the symbolism and how we give meaning to objects and colors and types of flower and crime scene tape and all of this stuff, this imagery, the aesthetic, the way you build up the atmosphere of the scene through describing words, all of this, I love it so much. It makes me so happy. This is the type of thing that I want to work on in little snippets in a journal. You can't really work on things like big structural elements like payoffs and character development and things like that. You could work on dialogue. Dialogue is the type of thing that you really need to study when you listen to people and when you analyze like other bits of writing and novels and things like that. And yeah, that's my little spiel about figurative language and the reason why I do these little sprints and why I work on this, just because I find that this is really helpful. And so that's what I'm currently working on in my journal. I have found that as the month has gone on, I am being less introspective, I'm describing things more, I'm working more on craft. I think having the last couple days where I'm doing specific tasks like these little writing sprints, this has been really helpful for me to motivate me. This challenge is now officially complete. Today is the 27th of August, and in actuality, I'm pretty sure that's 32 days, not 30, so technically it's like slightly longer than a month, but anyway. So how many pages did we write? 1, 2, 3... This is 102 written pages in my journal, maybe like 40% of the way through, which is a pretty sizable effort with only 1 month's worth of writing. Some days I wrote a couple of sentences and paragraphs. I think there was one day in there where I wrote, "I don't feel like doing this today." And that was like all I did. But there were other days where I wrote like 10 pages. I think there was probably a day where I wrote like 15. I think in terms of, loosening the writing ligaments, the thing that helped me the most for that was doing the dedicated work sprints, was doing the little exercises on figurative language. In terms of the rest of the journaling, I will say it is very therapeutic. This was definitely the most introspective month I've had. Did it help me? Probably. Honestly, it probably did. Will I keep doing it? Will I remember to keep journaling? That is a fabulous question. Regardless, I do have this here now. I do know that if there's a particular day where I'm feeling like I want to just pour out all of my feelings, I know I can do that. 102 pages written in this journal. We are all done. Now that I've had a few days to collect my thoughts and reflect on this challenge, I will say it was a lot easier than the last challenge I did. I'm very happy that I did not have to get up at 4 AM this time. In terms of whether or not it was a success though, I'm gonna say a little bit. I did enjoy the process of journaling. I never really have spent a lot of time in my life sitting down, writing a journal, forcing myself to keep the routine. I'm just very, very bad at keeping routines that don't come naturally to me. Maybe we're all like that. I did, however, enjoy the process of journaling. In terms of using it for bettering my writing, for loosening the ligaments, I'm not sure if it did. I like the process of sitting down to journal right before I start writing, so maybe that's the type of thing that I can keep going with. But in terms of Virginia Woolf's specific routine of writing in her journal every single evening, that's probably not the type of thing I'm going to end up continuing with. So at a very high level, what did I learn? Number one, I am still very bad at picking up new routines and sticking to them. Ever since I finished this challenge a few days ago, I have not touched the journal once. I haven't picked it up. Number two, as it turns out, I do really enjoy the practice of journaling. However, in terms of a writing craft exercise, it's probably not the most useful thing for me, although I did, as I said, find it very therapeutic. And finally, number three, in terms of keeping snippets of writing like a writer's sketchbook, as Donna Tartt said in that clip at the beginning of this video, I think the way that I have that process is that I'm constantly writing notes to myself or emailing myself or instant messaging myself across many, many different platforms. I am such a mess in so many ways, but one of the ways I'm a mess is that I will sort of chaotically send myself snippets of writing, dialogue, ideas. I'm very haphazard with the way that I collect little bits of writing and storytelling and images that I want to use in my work. The reason that I'm writing it down is because the act of committing it to my notes app or to paper is actually what helps me retain the information. It's not necessarily about me going back and reusing that information later. I remember there's this quote by Stephen King, and I'm paraphrasing, so this might be wrong. Time and memory are like a sieve for bad ideas. Like, you get rid of all the bad ones and you keep the good ones. And I don't 100% agree with that. Maybe I like 80% agree with that. I feel like the ideas that I really care about are the ones that are actually going to stick with me. And I like having my haphazard notes system so that if I do know that I've written something down, I can actually go back and find it. In terms of randomly sending myself snippets of things across every platform that I have, I'll probably keep doing that. Thank you so very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, and before we go, I should quickly remind you that we're going to be going on a trip to Japan in May 2023. We're going to be going with Trover Trip to Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. We're going to be checking out a whole bunch of bookstores. It's going to be so fun. I cannot wait for this trip. If you want to hear more information about the Japan trip that's coming up in May next year, there is a link in the description down below, so feel free to click on that and check it out. An enormous thank you to everyone over on Patreon for supporting my channel and all of the things that I make. Take care, everyone, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.